It was only after my wife's death that my best friend told me the truth. The boy I called my son was his flesh and blood. I'm 52, widowed for 8 months now. My wife, Emily, passed suddenly from a stroke. We'd been married for 22 years, raised 2 boys, Owen, 18, and Liam, 15. To everyone else, we were the model family, Emily the perfect wife and mother, me the steady husband, and my best friend Jack, 53, always around as Uncle Jack, to the kids. Jack and I grew up together, grade school, high school, best man at each other's weddings. He was part of the furniture of my life. I trusted him like I trusted my own brother. After Emily's funeral, the grief was overwhelming. I was drowning in casseroles, sympathy cards, and quiet nights in a house that suddenly felt cavernous. Jack came by a lot, checking in, bringing beer, sitting with me in silence. I thought it was just him being the kind of friend he'd always been. Then, one rainy Thursday night, he called and said, "Can I come over? I need to talk to you. Alone." I figured maybe he was having his own grief spiral. Instead, he sat in my living room, staring at the carpet like it might swallow him, and said the words that detonated my world all over again. "Mike, I was in love with Emily. For 10 years we were together. Liam's my son." At first, I thought I misheard him. Then I laughed, a short, bitter bark, because what else do you do when your best friend just rips the foundation out from under you? But Jack didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He just sat there, looking like he'd swallowed glass. And that's when I knew. He was telling the truth. I told him to explain himself. I didn't yell. My voice came out flat, like I was asking about the weather. Jack ran a hand over his face. "It started. God, Mike, it started after that fight you and Emily had about your job. Remember? You were working late, traveling all the time. She called me to vent, we drank too much wine and—" He trailed off, but I didn't need him to finish the sentence. I asked him, point blank, "Was it just once?" He looked me dead in the eye. "No. It never stopped." He described the ways they'd meet, sometimes at hotels when I was out of town, sometimes at our own house when I was staying with my parents to help Dad after his surgery. He told me about a trip they took to Chicago under the guise of an art convention, where they booked a suite with a whirlpool tub and barely left the room. The worst was when he said, "Mike, she'd wear that blue dress you loved, but for me." That was when I had to get up and walk to the kitchen, just to put space between us before I did something I'd regret. I gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. When I came back, I asked about Liam. Jack nodded slowly. We never got a test, but we both knew. The timing, the way he looks. "Mike, I'm sorry." Sorry. That's what he had. A single word that landed like a dead weight in the room. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My mind was replaying 2 decades of moments, now poisoned. With every cheating story I've ever heard, there's a confrontation, the slammed doors, the screaming, the "how could you?" speeches. You want that release. You want to stand there and make them see your rage. But Emily was gone. There was no face to shout at, no eyes to lock onto and demand the truth from. All I had was Jack. And yelling at him felt empty. He sat there, taking up space in my living room like he belonged there, and every word out of his mouth sounded like it had been rehearsed for years. I asked him why he was telling me now. He said, "Because you deserve to know. And because I can't keep looking at Liam and pretending he's not mine." I told him he had no right to pretend anything, not in my house, not with my family, not in my marriage. He had the gall to shrug and say, "Emily and I, we loved each other, Mike." I know it's not what you want to hear, but it wasn't just sex. That almost made me laugh. Not the ha-ha kind, but the bitter, "You've got to be kidding me" kind. Love? He was talking about love while sitting across from the man whose life he'd been gutting for a decade. I didn't throw him out right then. I should have. But part of me wanted to hear it all, every sick detail. I wanted to know exactly how deep the rot went, because only then could I figure out how to cut it out of my life for good. The morning after Jack dropped his bomb, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my coffee until it went cold. Liam came downstairs, half asleep, mumbling about missing his bus. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw Jack's jawline. Jack's eyes. It made my stomach turn. I didn't tell Liam what was going on. Instead, I pitched it as a fun little science project for a school. Ordered one of those at-home DNA kits, and told him we could compare our results just to see how accurate the technology is. He laughed, thought it was cool, and swabbed his cheek without a second thought. When the results came in, I opened them alone in my office. Paternal match, 0%. My hands shook. Even though I'd prepared myself for it, seeing it in black and white was like being punched in the gut all over again. 22 years of marriage. 15 years of raising a boy I thought was mine. And all the while, my best friend had been walking around knowing the truth, smiling at me, clinking beer bottles with me, standing next to me in family photos. I closed the laptop and just sat there, staring at the wall. The only clear thought I had was this: Liam didn't choose this. He didn't betray me. And whatever happened next, I wasn't going to make him pay for his mother's and Jack's sins. But Jack? Jack was going to pay in full. Once the DNA result burned itself into my brain, the rest of the puzzle pieces started snapping into place. All those late nights at the office Emily used to have? Jack was always the one who just happened to be nearby to give her a ride home. That weekend trip she took to help her sister with the new baby. Turned out Jack had a fishing trip the exact same weekend, and came back with no fish and a suntan. I remembered the time I stayed at my parents' place for a week after Dad's surgery. Emily insisted she'd be fine at home alone. Jack dropped by to check on her every single day. I thought he was just being a good friend. Now I realize he was being a live-in boyfriend while I was gone. The Chicago Art Convention? She came home with a souvenir mug that said Magnificent Mile. Jack came back from a conference that same week with a Cubs cap. They'd even joked once that they probably crossed paths in the city. Yeah, in the same hotel room. Even holidays weren't safe. Jack always made sure to be the last guest to leave, helping Emily clean up, while I was distracted saying goodbye to family. I used to appreciate it. Now, every time I look back, I wonder if they were sneaking kisses in my kitchen while I hugged my mom at the door. It was like I'd been living in a long, slow-motion con, every excuse, every coincidence, meticulously placed so I'd never see the truth until it was too late. And the sickest part? They'd both pulled it off with smiles on their faces. It hit me in waves. 1 minute I'd be pacing the kitchen, furious, picturing my fist connecting with Jack's smug face. The next, I'd be sitting on the edge of my bed staring at the floor, wondering if I'd wasted the best years of my life on a performance I didn't even realize I was watching. Sleep stopped coming. My mind would start looping at 2 a.m., Emily laughing at something Jack said, Jack's hand on Liam's shoulder during his Little League games, the way they'd exchange a look across the table when I told a bad joke. I started questioning everything. And then came the shame. Not for anything I'd done, but for what I hadn't seen. I'd always thought of myself as a decent judge of character, someone who could read people. But I'd been blind in my own house for 10 years, maybe longer. I stopped answering most calls, even from my mom and my brother Nate. I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I didn't want to hear, "You're better off without her," when she was already gone and had left me with this toxic mess as her legacy. The only person I did talk to was my sister Jenna. She's blunt to a fault, and she didn't sugarcoat it. "Mike," she said, "you can either let this kill you, or you can burn it down and walk away with the only thing that still matters, Liam. Burn it down." That phrase stuck with me. And slowly, between the nights of staring at the ceiling and the mornings of drinking coffee I couldn't taste, a plan started forming. I wasn't just going to cut Jack out of my life. I was going to make him feel the kind of loss I was feeling, a loss that would stay with him every single day. I knew an explosion wouldn't work. If I went off on Jack in some big, dramatic scene, he'd just paint himself as the grieving friend who made one mistake. People have short memories when the cheater can cry on cue. So I decided to go quiet. Ice cold. Surgical. Step 1: access. Jack had a key to my house, had for years. I changed the locks without a word. When he eventually tried to stop by, he'd figure it out. Step 2: family ties. Jack was Liam's godfather. I called my lawyer and rewrote every legal document I had: my will, Liam's guardianship arrangements, financial accounts. Jack's name vanished from all of it. The money I'd earmarked for godparents' support, if anything happened to me now, went into a trust Liam could access without Jack ever touching a cent. Step 3: social ties. We shared a big friend group from high school. I didn't gossip, didn't spill the whole truth. Instead, I started dropping tiny hints. Yeah, Jack and I aren't as close as we used to be. Or, there are some things I can't overlook anymore. People are curious by nature. I knew they'd start asking questions on their own, and Jack wouldn't know how much they knew. Step 4: patience. I resisted the urge to confront him again. Every text he sent, I ignored. Every voicemail, I deleted. He was going to feel me vanish before he understood why. It wasn't going to be a public spectacle, it was going to be a slow starvation. And by the time he realized he'd been cut off from everything we built over decades, it would be too late for him to crawl back. It took about 3 weeks before Jack noticed the shift. He showed up unannounced one Saturday, probably assuming he could just walk in like always. The new lock stopped him. I watched on the doorbell camera as he jiggled the handle, frowned, then rang the bell twice. When I opened the door, I stayed in the frame, didn't invite him in. Hey, he said, forcing a smile. Thought I'd drop by, see how you and Liam are holding up. We're fine, I said. Short. Flat. He hesitated, clearly thrown. I tried calling. Did you get my messages? I got them. A long pause. Look, Mike, I know you're upset. I don't want to lose you over this. We've been friends our whole lives. That line, I don't want to lose you over this, made my blood boil. This wasn't a fender bender. It was 10 years of betrayal, a stolen son, and a marriage rotting from the inside out while he smiled in my face. I didn't yell. I didn't even change my tone. You lost me a long time ago, Jack. You just didn't notice. Before he could reply, I shut the door. That was the first crack. I could see it in his expression, the start of him realizing I wasn't playing the old game anymore. And I wasn't done tightening the screws. I didn't have to smear Jack's name, just remove the insulation he'd been hiding behind for decades. We'd been part of the same circle since high school, a mix of old friends, their spouses, and a few new faces who got absorbed along the way. Jack thrived in that group. It was his stage: barbecues, poker nights, holiday parties, all places where he could play the loyal friend and Uncle Jack, routine. So I stopped inviting him. More than that, I started hosting. When I organized the summer cookout, I sent group texts that somehow forgot his number. If someone noticed, I'd just shrug and say, "Things are complicated right now." No details. No drama. People hate a mystery, they start filling in the blanks themselves. I made a point of catching up with old friends one-on-one. Over beers or coffee, I'd drop a vague line. "Jack's not the guy I thought he was." Then I'd change the subject. Every time, I could see the curiosity spark. The next month, our mutual friend Gary had his 50th birthday bash. I went early, worked the room, and made sure I was deep in conversation with people Jack usually gravitated toward. When he arrived, he barely got a nod from anyone. By the end of the night, he was standing in the corner with a drink, scrolling his phone. It wasn't instant exile, it was erosion. Piece by piece, I was stripping away the social safety net that let him pretend he was still the good guy. Soon enough, he'd be standing in the wreckage, and I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. Jack's entire career was built on his family man image. He worked in community banking, sat on a local charity board, and loved to be photographed shaking hands at fundraisers with his wife's arm looped through his. After his divorce years ago, he'd leaned heavily on my family for credibility, showing up at school events, taking photos with his godson, playing the role of dependable Uncle Jack. That image was fragile, and I knew exactly where to press. One of my old college buddies, Rob, handled PR for the charity Jack sat on. Over beers, I told Rob that Jack wasn't the role model he pretends to be. I didn't go into details, I just said there were personal ethics issues, and that if the wrong story got out, it could make the board look bad. Rob raised an eyebrow and said, "Noted." A month later, Jack's smiling headshot vanished from the charity's website. Official statement? Stepping back to focus on personal matters. Translation: they didn't want him anywhere near a camera. Not long after, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Jack had been passed over for a regional manager promotion at the bank. Apparently, there were concerns about optics. I didn't have to connect the dots for him. The beauty of it was, he couldn't accuse me of anything without admitting what he'd done. And every time I saw him in public, shoulders slumped, no crowd around him, I knew he was starting to understand just how much of his life had been propped up by me. Liam was the only part of this mess I cared about keeping intact. Yeah, the DNA said he wasn't mine. But in every way that mattered, he was my son. I'd raised him, taught him how to ride a bike, sat through his school plays, held him when he cried. Blood didn't change that. The hard part was cutting Jack out without letting Liam feel like he was caught in some mysterious tug-of-war. At first, Liam didn't even notice. Jack had been around less since Emily died, and I filled that gap with time. We went fishing more, hit the batting cages, even took a weekend road trip to see a ball game in another city. It wasn't about distracting him. It was about reminding both of us what our life looked like without anyone else in it. I never badmouthed Jack to him. Kids pick up on that bitterness, and I didn't want him to resent me later. But when Jack tried texting Liam about catching up, I made sure those plans never happened. "He's busy with school," I'd say. Or, "We've got family stuff." Always vague, never giving Jack a foothold to push against. Eventually, the invites stopped coming. I think even Jack realized the door was shut for good. Meanwhile, Liam started opening up more, about school, about his friends, even about Emily. And every time he did, I thought, this is my son. Not because of DNA, but because I'm here. Jack had stolen a lot from me. He wasn't going to steal this, too. By the time fall rolled around, Jack's presence in my life had shrunk to almost nothing. But almost wasn't enough. I didn't want loose threads he could ever tug on. First, I cleared the physical reminders. Every photo, every framed vacation shot where he was lurking in the background, every candid from barbecues and birthdays, gone. Not smashed in a fit of rage, just methodically removed. Boxed, sealed, shoved into the farthest corner of the attic like they never existed. Next came the digital purge. I unfriended him on every platform, scrubbed old posts that tied him to my family. It was strange scrolling through years of memories and watching him vanish from them, but it felt cleaner. The last step was the hardest, our storage unit. We'd split it years ago for overflow stuff, both tossing things in there over time. When I went to empty my half, I found a box labeled in Emily's handwriting, Mike and Jack, miscellaneous. Inside were old trip mementos, golf scorecards, even a few Polaroids of the three of us grinning like idiots. I left Jack's half untouched, but I took mine and walked it straight to the dumpster. No ceremony. Just gone. When the unit was officially in my name only, I sent him the final text he'd ever get from me. "Don't contact me again. Not for anything." No threats. No parting shots. Just the truth, we were done. That night, I slept through without waking up once. By winter, I didn't have to do a damn thing. The machine was running on its own. Our old friend group had gone from politely curious to openly skeptical about Jack. I'd never spilled the full story, but enough people had pieced together the timeline. The whispers were everywhere. Something happened between Mike and Jack. I heard it was about Emily. Didn't Liam always look a little like him? Jack hated gossip when it wasn't in his control, and now it was completely out of his hands. Mutual friends stopped inviting him to things, because it might be awkward. The charity board had already cut him loose, and when the bank's holiday party rolled around, I noticed on social media that he wasn't there. Later, a buddy mentioned, "They're not letting him represent the bank at public events anymore. Personal reputation issues." Even his dating life seemed to take a hit. I'd hear through the grapevine that he'd gone out with someone twice, then she suddenly lost interest. In a small town, reputations spread faster than facts, and the beauty was, I didn't need to feed the story. People did it for me. Meanwhile, Liam and I were thriving. More fishing trips, more ball games, more weekends where the only drama was whose turn it was to do the dishes. I was building a life that didn't just exclude Jack, it erased him. And judging by the look on his face the one time I passed him in the grocery store, cart half full, no smile, no eye contact, he knew it. At some point I realized I hadn't thought about Jack in weeks, not really. Sure, his name still floated through conversations with old friends, but it didn't twist my gut anymore. I was too busy living. Liam and I took a spring break trip to the mountains, just the two of us. We hiked, grilled steaks over an open fire, and stayed up late watching old comedies on my laptop. One night, he looked at me and said, "This is the best trip ever, Dad." That word, Dad, hit harder than any DNA test ever could. I also started reconnecting with parts of myself I'd shelved during the marriage. Picked up woodworking again, something Emily used to call a waste of garage space. Built a coffee table for the living room and a guitar stand for my growing collection. Socially, I widened my circle. Joined a local hiking group, started going to trivia nights with some coworkers. I even went on a few casual dates, nothing serious, just getting used to the idea that there could be life after betrayal. It wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about building so much good on top of it that the bad parts didn't dominate the view anymore. And the more I filled my life with new things, the less room there was for ghosts, Emily's, Jack's, or the man I used to be when I trusted them. If you told me a year ago that my wife was gone, my best friend was the father of my son, and my entire marriage was a lie, I'd have said no one could survive that intact. But here's what I learned: you can. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because you decide the pain doesn't get to own you forever. I learned that betrayal doesn't just happen in the moment you discover it. It's retroactive. It rewrites your memories, makes you question every smile, every "I love you." And you can let that rot you from the inside, or you can build something stronger over it. I learned that revenge doesn't have to be fire and fury. Sometimes it's colder, cleaner. It's removing someone so completely from your life that they can't touch you, can't lean on you, can't even pretend you still think about them. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't blood. It's choice. Liam may share Jack's DNA, but he's my son because I show up every day. If you're reading this and you're in the thick of it, if you've just had your world pulled out from under you, here's my advice: don't chase closure from the people who broke you. They'll never give it to you. Make your own. I didn't just lose Emily and Jack. I lost the version of myself who put blind trust above self-respect. And honestly, good riddance.